Okay, welcome everyone. Purim is still in the air, but everyone knows that we're on the way to Pesach. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, that there are many, many different cycles of time in the Jewish year, in the calendar. So we are entering one that's called to connect the redemption of Purim to the redemption of Pesach. This is in a sense, a cycle in of itself. Going from Purim into Pesach is called to connect the redemption of Purim to the redemption of Pesach. So I just want to go back a little bit in time and connect three holidays: Tu B'Shvat, Purim, and Pesach. So here we're in the cycle of Purim to Pesach, but it really begins on Tu B'Shvat. What's the connection? So first of all, Tu B'Shvat, Purim, specifically Shushan Purim, and Pesach are all on full moons. The full moon of Shvat, the full moon of Adar, and the full moon of Nisan, 3 in a row. So that connects them in a very deep way. And spiritually, without really going back too much to Tu B'Shvat, but the symbol of the sap beginning to rise up in the tree symbolizes the new energy of redemption that is beginning to flow into the world. And it reaches a higher level on Purim and even a higher level on Pesach. So there's really a flow here, 3 full moons in a row, and they all have to do with redemption. Tu B'Shvat has to do with the redemption of nature, going from barren trees and into the spring. And we know that Pesach has to come out in the spring. That's where we get the whole idea of having to add 7 times in 19 years an additional month in order to keep the lunar calendar, which is the Jewish calendar, but in tune and in sync with the solar calendar. But it starts in Tu B'Shvat, and it continues in Purim, and in a sense it reaches its full potential into actuality on Pesach. But what else connects them is wine. For those who have the custom to do a Tu B'Shvat Seder, so it's modeled after a Pesach Seder with 4 cups of wine or grape juice, and in between eating different fruits that represent the 4 Kabbalistic worlds. So here we see that there's a flow from Tu B'Shvat to Purim and Purim to Pesach. But what we're going to concentrate tonight is really from Purim to Pesach, because that's exactly where we are right now. Like I said, Purim is still in the air, and Pesach is already, right? People are already starting to clean, and when am I going to do this room, and when am I going to do that room, with the shopping, the whole thing. So actually, before I quote Rav Ginsburg, I want to say that we should all continue our prayers for Refuah Shlema for Rav Yitzchak Feivish ben Braina Malka. Should have a Refuah Shlema. Baruch Hashem, he taught on Purim. It was a very, very great thing. And our prayers should continue for a full Refuah Shlema. So much of what I'm going to say tonight is based on different teachings I've learned from Rav Ginsburg and kind of put them together. So Rav Ginsburg finds an amazing hint, a remez to the connection between Purim and Pesach. Later in the Torah, in the book of Bamidbar, so God is speaking to Miriam and Aharon after they somewhat complained about Moshe. We won't go into that whole story, but God reveals to them that Moshe is, in a sense, in a category of his own. And the verse says, Peh el peh adaber bo, mouth to mouth, I will speak with him. In other places in the Torah, God says, or the Torah testifies that God spoke to Moshe face to face. But here it's mouth to mouth. So Rav Ginsburg said that, and actually I remember learning this at a Purim Suda with Rav Ginsburg, where he said, Peh el peh. So what's the first letter of Purim? Peh, the letter Peh. What's the first letter of Pesach? Also the letter Peh. So he said, mouth to mouth, I will speak to him, alludes to a connection between Purim and Pesach. They both begin with the word Peh, the letter Peh. But more than that, he said the word in between is El, Peh, El, Peh. El means two, mouth to mouth. The numerical value of 2, El, is 31. And there are exactly 31 days between Pesach and Purim and Pesach. So it's an amazing hint here. But we're going to see it's even deeper, this idea, I will speak with him. Because if we look at Purim and Pesach, they share many, many things in common, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But one thing they share is this idea of telling over a story, of speech. On Purim, we have a very, very unique thing that not only do we read the Megillah once, but we read it twice, once at night and once in the day. And the sages, the Chazal, thought that this story was so important, they added a halacha that you can't miss one word of the Megillah. You have to hear everywhere. You have to concentrate. You have to be focused to hear this story. The story is considered so deep, profound, and archetypal that we're told don't miss a word of it. On Pesach, so one of the mitzvot of the Seder is to tell over the story of coming out of Egypt to ourselves and especially to our children. And the text that we read, the Haggadah, means to tell. So going back to the verse, Peh el peh adaber bo, mouth to mouth, I will speak with him, ties Purim and Pesach together. Okay, there's a lot more. That's like the beginning here. Now we're going to build on that. So if you take the word mouth, Peh el peh, mouth, we spell it Peh Hey. The letter Peh itself means mouth, but the letter Hey has deep connections with speech and with the month of Nisan. So what are the connections? So first of all, one of the meanings of the letter Hey is to express oneself. And this might sound funny, but it's actually very true. The expression that we find in many, many different languages if you want to grab someone's attention, what do you say? Hey, hey over there. It's the letter hey. That's one of the way of expressing ourselves in order to get people's attention. But more than that is, as people have been coming to this class for a while, in the Sefer Yetzirah, it says that each of the 12 months is created through a letter and has a chush, a sense. So the letter of Nisan, the month of Pesach, is the letter Hey. Hey is the letter through which the month of Nisan is created. And what is the sense of Nisan? Speech. So if we're following, we're building this foundation of connection between Purim and Pesach and speech and telling over a story. And the letter Peh el Peh, mouth to mouth. And really, when we have the mitzvah on Seder night to tell over the story to our children, it really is mouth to mouth, generation to generation. That's what we're doing. So more connections with the letter Hey is, we're told that there are 5 places in the mouth where letters are enunciated. And if you just say the letters, you'll see some come from the lips, some come from more the teeth, some come more from the throat. There are 5 places in the mouth, just biologically, where letters come out. And this is very connected to the letter Hey, which means expression, which means speech. So there is a concept or a phrase in the Zohar that says, Dat ganiz bepuma, that knowledge is hidden in the mouth. So what does that mean, really? So one way to explain it, we're told that there are 3 clothings of the soul. The soul expresses itself, is enclosed in thought, speech, and action. So if we look at the 3 sfirot of Chabad, Chachma, Bina, and Dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So Chachma and Bina are 2 different ways of thinking, 2 different ways that wisdom comes to us and then is analyzed and categorized and put into an order. And then comes speech. So in this framework, when the Zohar says that knowledge is hidden in the mouth, it's like Chabad. It's the 3 letters of Chabad. Again, Chachma and Bina, wisdom and understanding, different frameworks of how we think. But then it comes down into Dat, and once it's expressed, then it takes on a form. It takes a form. That's why, I'm speaking from personal experience, and I'm sure many of you have the same experience in different ways. We have lots of thoughts. We're constantly thinking. But until we can put it into words and ultimately into action, it remains somewhat ethereal, a bit nebulous, that the action of putting our thoughts into speech is what brings it down into the world. So that's what the Zohar means, that knowledge is hidden in the mouth, because without the step of speech, then again, it remains in a nebulous state. That's why the sages, Chazal, say that when we pray, even if we're doing it as it were silently, we have to be moving our lips and enunciating the words. In other words, thought or blessings can't just be mental. They have to be expressed. We could hold an apple and think the blessing on Borei Priya Eitz. But halakhically, according to Jewish law, you have to say it. It has to come into the world through the mouth. So I want to share with you somewhat, sounds like a very simple thought, but both of these ideas had a profound effect on me. Is once Rav Ginsburg explained what is redemption and exile on a personal level, like a very relevant level for each person. So he said, just very simply, he said, redemption is the ability to express oneself. And exile is the inability to express oneself. When one feels unable to express their feelings or their thoughts, or feel intimidated, or feel fearful to express what they need to express or want to express. That's exile. And redemption is that wonderful feeling of being able to express oneself, whether in speech, in poetry, in art, in music, in a profession, in a hobby, whatever it is, but it just feels so good when the creative juices flow and they're successful. One is able to express themselves. So that's, like I said, a very simple thought, but usually the deepest thoughts are simple. They're very simple. But when I first heard this, it just really went into my neshama, and I've never forgotten it. Now, it's a very similar, it's just that the language is a little bit different, a definition that Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach gave of freedom. Freedom is like redemption. So this is the example that I heard from him, but you could replace it with many, many other languages, other words to get the same idea across. So he said like this, he said, yesterday, I felt depressed. Today, I feel depressed. Now that I think about it, I've been depressed like for weeks. And if I really think about it, I think I've been depressed for years. So what is freedom? Freedom is that 1 minute from now, I don't have to be depressed. Meaning, freedom is the ability to just jump over any obstacle, whether it's emotional, psychological, intellectual, trauma, however you want to express it. And say, even I've been like this my whole life. In 1 minute from now, I can change. That's what freedom is. That also is a teaching that just got right into my neshama. That we all know how hard it is to break a routine or a bad habit or an addiction. These are not easy things. These are very difficult, whether they're physical addictions or psychological, emotional. But freedom is that we can do it. So we should all be inspired by both of these definitions of what redemption is and what freedom is. So now I want to connect also Purim to Pesach in a different way. Purim is in the last month of the year. Adar is the last month of the year. Nisan is the first month of the year. So here's a classic example of what it says in Sefer Yetzirah. Na'utz sofan b'techilatan v'b'techilatan b'sofan. The end is wedged in the beginning, and the beginning in the end. So this is a statement that strengthens the cycle we're in of going from the redemption of Purim to the redemption of Pesach. Is it because we're tying together the end of the year? In case everyone doesn't know, we actually have 4 new years in the year, but I'll just mention the idea that Rosh Hashanah, the new year, is a new year of years, because we see that it's in the 7th month of the year. And Nisan is the new year of the months. So in months, and we have a lunar calendar. So here we're tying the end to the beginning. And this idea of beginning, we are going to be talking about this more because this class is weekly. And we are going to build up to Pesach, different aspects. And when we get to Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so this is the first day of the new year of months. And Pesach is all about newness, about renewal, rejuvenation. We'll get into that more in future classes. So you'll say, well, what is the renewal of Purim? So here we have a very simple answer. Purim was the first holiday added to the Jewish calendar since the time we received the Torah at Sinai, 900 years before. In other words, in those 900 years, many miracles happened. Many incredible events happened. And yet, new holidays were not added. So there's something very new about Purim. It was a huge chiddush, a huge innovation to add a holiday to the Jewish calendar. The next one was Hanukkah. Hanukkah also was added. So here we see a beautiful connection between Adar. Seems like it's the end of the year, and it is, but the end is wedged in the beginning and the beginning in the end. So in the ending of the year is already pregnant the newness of the new year of months that is coming. And there's a further hint to this. This is also a Torah from Rav Ginsburg, is that the word Purim is a notirokon. It's a condensed version, let's say, of Peru Uravu, to be fruitful and multiply. Peru Uravu is, in a sense, condensed into the word Purim. So here we see, and it's an amazing thing because every 7 times in every 19 years, we add a extra month, and we call the whole year a Shana Muberet, a pregnant year, because there's this extra month that, in a sense, is born into the calendar in order to keep the lunar and the solar calendar in sync. So that's just an amazing connection. We could go deeper here. Adar, and we're still in Adar, is a water sign. And the constellation or the astrological sign, are dagim, the fish. And the fish were the first creatures to receive a blessing to be fruitful and multiply. So these are amazing, excuse me, excuse me 1 second, amazing connections. The being fruitful and multiplying, the pregnant year, the end of the year, in a sense, giving birth to the new year of Nisan coming up. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bidbaro. Okay, now give me 1 second. I want to show you something very, very amazing. No, a second. Okay, so we're gonna go back now to the word peh, mouth to mouth. And every morning in our prayers we say, Baruch she'amar v'haya olam. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. So this is an expression of the Jewish tradition that God spoke the world into being. That's why in the story of creation, we have 10 different times. Vayomer Elokim, God said, let there be X, and there was X. In other words, through divine speech, the world was created. The first one is, Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And the light was created through divine speech. So this is connected to a verse that says, Devar Melech Shilton. The word of the king is his authority. Now this is talking about a flesh and blood king. How does a king rule? Through his speech. In other words, what the king says is what goes. And that is his authority. Afterwards, he might put a stamp on it, a seal, but it comes into the world through speech. And God, we refer to God as Melech HaOlam, the king of the universe. So God speaks the world into creation. So I'm going to show you the letter Peh, the way it's written in the Torah. And if you'll notice, inside the Peh is the letter Bet. It's the only letter that has another letter like inside of it. It's the Peh is pregnant with the letter Bet. Okay, so what is the first letter of the Torah? A Bet. Bereshit, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so the Zohar says that God wrote the Torah black fire on white fire. The black fire are the letters. The white fire is the cloth, is the parchment. So the Torah is black fire on white fire. Now, if you reverse the colors in a sense, so I'm going to show you again. If you would make the Bet black, like the letters in the Torah, you would have a white letter Peh surrounding it. Is that? I hope that's clear. In other words, this is how the letter Peh appears in the Torah, black on the white cloth. But but the letters are not written in, the letters are written in black, but here, if we made the bet black like it is in the Torah, so you'd have a white Peh around it. So this is a deep, deep hint of God speaking the world into being. That's just an amazing concept, an amazing, amazing concept. And in the continuation of the classes, we will go much deeper into Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first day of the month of Nisan, and its connection to creation. So I just wanted to mention that because it has to do with speech. Remember, the month of Nisan has to do with speech, and we made this connection between the story of Purim and the story of the Haggadah. I want to throw something else in here. Is also, this is from Rav Ginsburg, is we said that the letter Hey is a letter of expression. And again, the word mouth is two letters, Peh, Hey. And they both have to do with expressing through speech. So the Haggadah has 15 steps. Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, etc. There's 15 steps in the Seder. The fifth step, which is the same numerical value of Hey, actually begins with the word Hey. Ha lachma anya. This is the bread of affliction. But it starts with actually the word Hey. We pronounce it more ha lachma anya. So in other words, the fifth part of the Seder, the fifth part of the Haggadah, and the Haggadah begins with what letter? A Hey. And the word of the fifth part is Hey. And even further, the triangle of 5 equals 15. A triangle of a number means 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 15. So in a sense, the 15 steps of the Haggadah is a full revelation, full expression of the letter Hey. Because remember, the month of Nisan is created through the letter Hey. Now there's another verse that says in Psalms, He'amanti ki adaber. I have come to a state of faith, of belief, because I spoke. So here this verse is making a connection between faith and speech. And this is going back to what we said, is that as long as our thoughts are totally mental, they're not fully expressed. So when we speak, then we put, let's say, meat on the bones. We put substance into the skeleton of our thoughts. But here it's making a very deep connection between faith and speech. And I'm sure you would agree with me, maybe the most potent time of the year to connect to our faith in not just God, but our faith in our connection to the Jewish people is Seder night, the Pesach night. That full moon of Nisan, the energy it's electric. It's absolutely electric. And this is when we give over our faith to our children. And so many people have such vivid memories of Pesach Seders when they were children. I hope it's true for everyone, but I know for myself, and I'm not from a religious family, but we did, keep certain traditions, and of course we had a Pesach Seder every year. And some of my absolute earliest memories are of Pesach Seders. There's just something electric about it, and this kind of faith that's given over on Seder night is happening through speech. It's happening through speech. Okay, so I wanna like tie this together, and then we'll do what we usually do. We'll open up the mics. We'll ask the host to open up the mics, and people can ask or share or comment. So one thing we didn't mention is the concept of the oral tradition is called Torah Shebal Peh. The Torah of those who are, in a sense, masters of the mouth. Because in oral tradition, how does it happen? Through teaching, through speech. That's how the oral tradition is given over. And many people in today's world, especially those who are not necessarily from a specific religious background, have a very hard time understanding an oral tradition that is given over thousands of years. Remember, from Mount Sinai till the Mishnah was written down is 1,500 years. That's like a long time. That's like 5 times the history of the United States. And that's not all of Jewish history. That's just from Sinai to the Mishnah. But the oral tradition is still alive and well. We are all right now participating in the oral tradition. We are giving it over and teaching. And so that idea of Torah Shebal Peh, that Purim and Pesach both have to do with speech, telling over the story, strengthening our faith in Jewish destiny and divine providence, in the chain of generations. All of this is tied together in the period of time we're in now. That's how we started, that we're in a very distinct cycle going from the redemption of Purim to the redemption of Pesach. So I'll end with a blessing. I end with a blessing that, just like we say, we don't just count time, we try to make our time count. But it's the same thing with speech, is we should measure our words. We should understand the power in our words. One of the things we learned from the idea that God created the world through speech is a lesson to all of us that we can create worlds and destroy worlds through our speech. We can create relationships and we can destroy relationships through speech. So this is a very special time to contemplate these ideas, and we should go from redemption to redemption. and we should all be healthy and strong, and the world desperately needs a redemption here, very much. I mean, it needed it before the pandemic. How much more so now? But we should all be blessed to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we should be strong and healthy, and we should continue our prayers for Refuah Shalema for Rav Yitzchak Feivish ben Brina Malka. Okay.